Hi everybody, welcome back. My name's Alyssa. I'm a trained midwife, international board certified lactation consultant and holistic sleep coach. And today I'm here to talk to you about the 3 things that you must do in your first week of breastfeeding. So stay tuned. So I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you've either just had a baby or you're getting to that point where you're preparing to have a baby and it's all getting down to the wire and you're starting to maybe freak out a little bit about how breastfeeding's going to go. Or maybe you've kind of dived into it thinking, I want to breastfeed, I'm hoping I'm going to breastfeed, but you've heard lots of awful stories from people and you're just feeling a bit anxious about diving into it. I have been working with breastfeeding mums for over 10 years now, and there's a lot of things that I've picked up along the way, as well as my own experience breastfeeding my first 2 babies, that really make a difference if you can do these things in the first week after your baby's born. So the first thing that you want to make sure that you do after your baby's born is make sure that you feed them within the first couple of hours after birth. It's crucial for bringing in a good milk supply that's sufficient to feed your baby that we feed them early after they're born. Your baby also doesn't have very high reserves. They're used to having nutrients coming to them 24 hours a day before they're born. So we need to make sure that they're having that early feed within that first hour or 2 to help keep their blood sugar up and help give them the energy to then wake and feed again frequently after that point. This is even more critical if your baby is born early, if they're particularly small, or there's concerns over their blood sugar. So if you have diabetes or if you've had gestational diabetes, your baby will be much more prone to having those very low blood sugars. So it's really important that we get that first feed in early. Now it might be the situation that either your baby won't feed, they won't latch on, you're having struggles with that first feed. It might be that either you or your baby are unwell and you just physically can't feed them in those first couple of hours. Don't panic. All you need to do is make sure that we're still removing some milk or some colostrum, as it will be, within those first few hours after birth. And this can be done by hand expressing. So you can hand express some colostrum into a syringe. This can then be fed to your baby, and I'll leave a link to a guide down below on finger feeding and how to go about doing that, and also how to hand express. So all you need to make sure that you're doing is that within the first few hours of birth, you're either feeding your baby or you're expressing some colostrum so that we're signaling your body that, hey, yes, we want that milk supply to come in and we want plenty of milk, please. The next crucial thing you need to do soon after birth is start feeding your baby frequently. Now for a new baby, this might be every couple of hours. It's very rare for newborn babies to go much longer than around about 4 hours between feeds, but it's pretty common for it to be every 2 to 3 hours, especially over those first couple of days. In the first few days after birth, your body produces colostrum, which is an early milk. It is absolutely packed full of goodness, but because baby's tummy is so tiny and because of the composition of the colostrum, it doesn't fill them up for very long. So they are going to need pretty frequent feeds. In those first few days, the capacity of their stomach is only about 5 mils. So this is the equivalent of about a teaspoon. It's a really tiny amount. So they need that frequent feeding to keep their blood sugar up and keep their tummy full. The other reason we need to feed frequently is because this is really crucial for bringing in your milk supply. So your body responds to 2 things when it comes to stimulating your milk supply. The first one is the frequency with which we're stimulating your breasts. So every time your baby feeds or you pump, we set off a couple of hormones. One of them is oxytocin, which is the same hormone that caused your contractions in labour. This causes contractions around the little milk ducts to help push that milk out and get it flowing for your baby. And the second hormone that's set off is called prolactin. And prolactin is your milk making hormone. This is one of the ones that helps to signal your brain in terms of your milk production. So the more frequently that we feed, the more times during the day we're boosting that prolactin level, and therefore the more milk we produce. The longer that you go between feeds, the lower that prolactin level is, and the less milk your body will then produce. The other thing that happens when we go a long period of time between feeds is your breasts start to fill. Now to us this feels like a really good thing, and sometimes it seems tempting to think, well, I'll wait a bit longer and they'll be fuller and then there's more milk there, and it feels like that should be a good thing. But actually what's going on in your body is the opposite. So within your milk there is a protein called feedback inhibitor of lactation, or FIL. And what this protein does is it sends signals to your brain to tell your brain how much milk is being used and how much it needs to replace. So the fuller your breast is, the higher the levels of FIL, and that tells your brain, we've got plenty here, we don't need any more, cut back on how much you're producing. If we empty your breasts frequently, and we feed or express frequently, so every few hours, we're constantly removing that milk, dropping the level of that protein, and that's sending regular signals to your brain to say, hey, yep, we're using all of this, keep making more, let's keep it going. So the real key things for you to remember in those early weeks of breastfeeding, you want to feed or express frequently and feed or express effectively to make sure that we are draining your breasts as best as possible so they feel soft and light and deflated after your baby's fed or after you've pumped. The third thing that you really must do in that first week after breastfeeding is reach out and get some help if anything's not quite right. So if your baby is struggling to latch, or they're reliant on something like a nipple shield to be able to latch on, if your baby has lost more than 8 to 10% of their birth weight, or there's concerns from your health professional over their weight, if feeding is painful, or you're getting damaged nipples, or your nipples are looking pinched or misshapen after baby comes off. So sometimes this might look like they've got a bit of a fold line down the middle of your nipple, or they might look a lipstick shape. This is all an indication that baby is not latching and feeding effectively. If any of these warning signs pop up in that first week, or if you notice that after those first sort of 4 days, you're not feeling any changes in your breasts, you don't feel like your milk has come in, you're not feeling any fullness before feeds and softness afterwards, reach out and get help from an IBCLC preferably, or whatever breastfeeding support you can access locally to you as soon as you possibly can. The quicker you get that help, the quicker you deal with those issues, the easier everything will be. So don't be tempted to wait. If there's any of those red flags popping up, make sure you reach out and get some help straight away. I'll leave a link down below to where you can access virtual consultations from across the world with me, or book in-person consultations if you happen to be local in the UK. But if you're seeing any of those red flags, pain when feeding, baby not latching, reliant on nipple shields, losing too much weight, needing formula or expressed milk top-ups, or being fed by a bottle after feeds, or any sort of nipple damage, definitely reach out and get help as soon as you possibly can. The quicker you can turn that around, the easier the whole process will be for you, and the less long-term impact it's likely to have on your milk supply and the rest of your breastfeeding journey.